Get pucked. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Get Pucked podcast. Vito, Matt, and Dave here with you. Thank you for coming and spend a couple of your precious minutes with us while we dive deep in the bag of Habs land since there hasn't been a lot of Habs hockey in the past week or so. We're probably going to regurgitate a lot of what's been talked about lately, trade rumors and things of this nature, I think, guys. A couple little things here and there, these nuggets that are being dropped out all along social media from the insiders, kicking tires from this team and that team. You know, of course, how they like to do. Play up the Montreal fan base for the clicks, of course. Obviously, none of these things will come to fruition. But anyways, we're here for that.
Have some faith.
And yeah, okay, have some faith. No, I've been burned too many times. But before we get into Habs stuff, obviously the biggest thing that happened over the last weekend was the All-Star game. So I just want to talk about that real quick. So I don't know about you guys. I don't know how much time you put into the All-Star weekend, how much viewing you actually did. I will admit I did very little because anytime I attempted to watch it, I felt a little bit nauseous. I'm not gonna lie. It was tacky. It is boring. I think somebody who said it best was, I can't remember specifically who, but something to the effect of, these guys have been trained from a young age to suppress any and all personality that they have to make it to the NHL. And then you give them a weekend where you expect them to put on this big spectacle and be funny or whatever. And it just comes across so poorly. So I ask you this. I mean, what could the NHL do to make the All-Star game or weekend at least entertaining? Forget relevant and have any form of importance like they do in baseball. But what would you do to make it more fun? To just
how about start off by not making it a 3-hour broadcast for the skills competition? Let's start with that. Let's
how about stick to one skill at a time? How about that? What were they thinking?
That and better yet, why would I care about players taking slap shots on surfboards to have other players get dunked into a body of water in Florida? They want that water when it's that hot. I mean, come on. There's do something that kind of triggers a bit of the rivalries in the NHL, maybe. You know, make something to have a little bit more competition. Make something a little bit more interesting that has a bit of fight and spunk to it. You know, get something that gets you talking rather than just, okay, you took a slap shot, you hit a surfboard. Oh, cool.
I say, real quick, because you just reminded me of something, you get all the best goons of every team. You put them all on the ice at the same time, all 32, and you just ding, 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 and let them loose.
So WWE, you want the Royal Rumble?
I mean, it'd be better than what they gave us. Go ahead, Dave.
What goons? There's no goons in the NHL anymore. Anyways, look, it's not for us. The All-Star game is for kids. That's what it's for. Okay? It's not for adults. It's for kids. You enjoyed it when you were a kid. I know you did. And that's who's enjoying it now. It's not for adults. Who's going to – these guys are in the middle of a season, a grueling season. Most of them are on playoff – not most of them, but a lot of them are on playoff contenders. They can't risk any type of injury doing any type of competition. That's why Colorado probably almost had a heart attack when Cale Makar wiped out. Okay, so there's nothing you can do as long as you're having it in season to make it interesting. Forget it. It's out. For people who want competition, for people who want that, forget it. So you have to focus it on kids, and that's what it was geared to. It was geared to TikTok and fun stuff. And you're right, Matt. The personalities are just not there. It's not the NBA. It's not a good match. Okay, so there's nothing you could do. The one thing that was cool that you could do, I think, to keep adults entertained, are have the actual people who are good at what they do this actual skills competition. For example, Svechnikov wins the fastest skater, but McDavid didn't participate because
McDavid asked not to participate in that competition.
Who cares? I would never grant
stupid.
that.
Yeah,
when you're having the harder shot competition in the NHL, Al McInnes was there. Then it was Zdeno Chara. You know what I mean? That's how you knew. And then people were going up against them, and wow, that was like a measuring stick. Now it's like, okay, well, this guy wants to do this guy wants to do that. So hey, Svechnikov, you're the fastest NHL skater, you beat 4 people or whoever.
The
how many
fastest participant.
Yeah,
that's what he is.
Participant, but you're not the actual fastest skater, and that's what bothers me a little bit. That's the only thing I think that they could do. But at the end of the day, the NHL All-Star Game is a showcase for their sponsors and a showcase to kids. That's what it is. So for the players, it's like a weekend off, except for those participating. It's still kind of a weekend off, and for the fans, it's also a weekend off. Go watch Netflix. Go binge watch something else for 2 days and then come back.
But isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that just a silly way to do it? Why don't they do it like the NFL does with the Pro Bowl and do it like during the Stanley Cup finals or something like that? Maybe right after the Cup or something like that. Like just afterwards.
The Pro Bowl is arguably worse than the NHL.
Well, but at least it's done at the right time. Okay, granted they do it every week minus their one bye week, and it's scheduling and whatever. But like, it's just. Like, to your point, no one wants to go out. Even when they play the games, they skate around each other. I mean, it's been like this for years and years and years. They don't want to hit. They're not going to do anything, whatever. If you're going to do it, and I get your point, it's not for us, but I counter that to a point because kids are watching and they're making their parents drag them to it or watch it to a degree. But I would imagine that the vast majority of the consumers of hockey are not kids. As much as they would love it to be, it is people of our age bracket likely. And so when I watch it, I want to see John Scotts out there. That's what I want to see. I want to see stupidity. I want to see something. If you're not going to give me a different angle. Let me give me something fun to watch.
I'll give you a different angle. John Scotts, okay? Ryan Reeves, bring those guys. One of those superstars that are there get hurt because of a John Scott or Ryan Reeves, even just trying to be silly. That's a crap ton of money that'll be lost, and
censoring yourself now,
and fans and whatnot for the regular season.
I would argue that the John Scott All-Star Game. I'd argue the John Scott All-Star Game that happened a couple years ago was more viewed than anything since. I would argue that. I would ask you to go look at the numbers and go check. You know what? If it's gonna be a terrible product, then at least give me something like that. Just like the fan voting thing. When everybody was losing their mind, and okay, we're Canadiens fans, and okay, biasness. But frankly, all I saw for however long that was going on for was the hashtag Cole Caulfield. Now, okay, he got hurt, but he wasn't even the second guy in. They gave it to whoever else they wanted to. I forgot who it was. Was it Strutzel?
Yeah.
No, he didn't get in either. Was it Kachuk?
Oh,
anyways, I can't remember.
No,
but whatever. They didn't go to either Strutzel or Caulfield, and their names were everywhere. You couldn't open up Twitter without being inundated with this stuff. So they didn't really care what people wanted. They took who they wanted for whatever reasons their marketing people wanted to take them. And I mean, it's so hollow. I guess everything about it, from what they're doing about fans getting involved to the whole notion of what the product they put on and the other stupidities. I mean, my favorite thing
I never thought you felt so strongly about the All-Star game.
I've always thought it's been a perennial joke, and I don't understand why they do it. But my favorite thing this year, if to put a cap on it, was Suzuki winning a year's supply of Chipotle when we do not have Chipotle in Montreal. That was my favorite thing.
Look, if you're going to do the All-Star Game somewhere, some way to make it a little bit interesting, use that as your Winter Classic. You know what I mean? Go somewhere really cool. Look at what like the KHL does in Moscow, right? They have the freaking in St. Petersburg Square. They have the beautiful. It's a beautiful setting. Go do that. Go all around the world. You want to grow your game globally? Go to Switzerland in the Alps and have some kind of arena there. Fly the guys in for a weekend, have one game. Like, no one will care that the game sucks because it'll look so nice, right? Remember at Lake Tahoe how nice it was? Yep. That's not suited for an NHL game, right? Like, it sucks that like. Let's say you're in a playoff hunt and now you're playing on ice that like you have to pause the game midway through because the ice melted. That sucks. But if you put an All-Star game there, that's amazing. Go find a way to play it in the Grand Canyon. Go build an arena on a skyscraper and hold the game there. That's the way to do it.
These are all better ideas than what they did.
They're all better ideas. That requires some deep pockets for a weekend.
Yeah, for sure. But that's where you get the sponsorship in. You know, you want to, you get the like a host city, like the World Cup. You get them to pay for it.
I mean, I'm with you. They got to do something. I'm not sure what they're going to do. Yeah, it's in Toronto. It's in Toronto
funny,
next year. Like, oh.
What's funny about that is you have everybody blasting, all the media blasting the All-Star game until like, oh, the game's in Toronto next year, and everyone's all excited about it, as if we always love the All-Star game. What an accomplishment!
I'd be more
I don't know, man. I think fundamentally, even if they come up with interesting like little gimmicks and whatever it is that they do during the All-Star game itself, the biggest problem with it is absolutely meaningless. There is no purpose for it. There is no Eastern Western Conference and then something about, I don't know, home ice advantage or any of that notion.
You're never going to get that from the All-Star game.
And that was terrible when baseball did it anyways. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, imagine you having a 108 win season in baseball and you can't win on home soil because you're one guy who went represented and didn't win the game. Like, that's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous notion.
But there's got to be something that can make
honestly
it, like,
I would
worth
prefer
something.
I'd prefer at this point just cancel the entire thing. Give the players a good week off.
That's not going to happen.
Give them a week off and come back strong, well, somewhat rested.
But that's what it is.
Basically they do that. Yeah.
That's what it is for 700 players in the NHL. There's maybe 10 people there's 40 people that don't have a weekend off, but everybody else does. It's a marketing ploy, and you got to look at it that way. And to get angry about it and say, "Oh, this sucks," like, just take the night off. Go watch The Last of Us. Go binge watch something. I don't know.
Oh, I did. I did, baby. Oh, I did. The All-Star weekend for me got a grand total of like 5 minutes of viewing. And I was like, this is just not happening. And I don't want to be like that kind of guy. It's just anytime I had it on, between the announcers and them trying to like do anything to be somewhat interesting, and then the interviews they're doing on the ice and stuff. And I mean, I don't know, man. I found it incredibly tacky.
It was so the David Pastrnak Happy Gilmore thing was so cringe. The Mitch Marner doing the Miami Vice was cringe. Everything was cringe. Like, NHL players are not suited for this whatsoever. None of them.
They're not. It'd be cool if they were. It'd be cool if they didn't have to suppress their personalities.
Subban was that personality that kind of
even he couldn't save it.
No, he can't. Yeah. Even Roberto Luongo, you saw him and you're just like, okay.
Yeah, they brought him out for a second. They took 3 shots. Listen, they did some stuff. Anyways, I don't want to go too much longer on it because
we've spoken about it longer than you probably watched it.
Much longer, 6 times longer than I watched it. So let's dive into some Habs talk. Now, again, it's they've had mostly the last since the end of last week off, and they're not going to play again until Saturday. Which their first game back is a matinee. I think it's in the day, which is
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah. So you can almost guarantee that that's going to be an L. But anyways, let's talk some trades, right? So we're talking about the same old. But there's been, I guess, what we'll call a little bit of forward momentum. A couple more insiders coming out saying that, now for sure, like, oh, it was just like sort of rumors being talked about before. Now it's a little bit more concrete. We have confirmation that there are legitimate teams out there. We're getting some that are even being name dropped that are interested in a couple of the players on the Canadiens today. Let's start with one that is probably the most likely target to be moved, in my opinion anyways. Maybe you think otherwise. Edmundson. So Edmundson is that defenseman. He has, I think, to Vito's point, an episode ago or so, he has that playoff pedigree. He's gone to Stanley Cup. He's won it. This is a guy who is maybe not a 1-2 on a team, but he's a very, very strong 3-4. I don't think anybody can doubt that. The question is, given the environment that we find ourselves in this year and how first-round picks are being a little bit more coveted than they were last year, is it reasonable to assume that if Edmundson moves, it is for a first-round pick? Or should everybody start tempering their expectations, and Kent Hughes is going to need to get a little bit more, I don't know, complex in his trade packages, perhaps, to maybe net that first round? Or does he go for a comparable like a prospect? What's more likely, given the fact that the teams we're hearing about are like Edmonton, Los Angeles is a new one I've been recently seeing that they've been kicking tires. So what do you guys think? What's Eddie gonna get?
I think a prospect, or I don't think you're getting a first round pick. And again, I mean, I don't want to be wrong for the second year in a row, but like, if I'm an NHL general manager, I'm not paying first round pick for Joel Edmondson. I'm sorry, not for how he's been playing, not for his recent injury. Like, I'm not paying it. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in doing that, and I just don't see it happening. I honestly don't see it happening. And there's even talk about how they're going to keep him and they won't be able to move him or whatnot. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? But I think it's more likely that he stays than he gets a first round
pick. Okay.
It's probably gonna go down to the wire. But if Kent Hughes is adamant about getting the first round while everybody's being very stingy about it, then it's just a question of how much do teams value the first round versus their cup run, right? I don't think there's many teams out there that are going to be willing to part ways with the first round pick right now. It's not like last year, for example. Last year, people were saying it wasn't the deepest draft. This is a draft that even players drafted in 20 to 30 are still good. What's up, Dave?
The Habs got this year first round pick last year. That's how crazy general managers were.
Yes, but again, and I said that last episode, and you guys both came up with good points, saying that the Florida Panthers really thought that they were going to win the cup. They went all in. They just said, screw the first round picks. We're going to go for it, right? And they failed miserably doing that. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're not going to see teams maybe not wanting to give up a first round pick. I think Kent Hughes has a better chance of getting a first round equivalent from a team that's got a lot of prospects, like the Los Angeles Kings, than the actual first round pick itself.
So do you think that there are people reading into the fact that because Bergevin is now over in LA, that's why there's such a stronger plausibility that Edmondson might be going to LA? Because that was the guy that he brought in and stuff.
I think it's a few factors. Maybe MB has something there, but at the same time, LA's looking for another defenseman, someone with term, a veteran presence that's going to go with, work with Drew Doughty for the young prospect defensemen that are there. So there are some angles there that you can play with as to why you'd want to see why Edmonton would head towards LA. But at the same time, you have somebody like the Edmonton Oilers who need that defense, like probably more than anybody in this league, maybe just as much as the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? So they might be willing to part ways with a prospect, but Holland doesn't have the reputation of trading away first round picks.
Okay, so like, what's the potential return then if it's not going to be a first? Who's the prospect that you target in Los Angeles, for example? Like, what's the organizational need that there's a prospect there that Hughes is like, I want to take this kid because this kid I can definitely see being a part of this team moving forward, because that's what you'd be going for. You wouldn't give up Edmondson for just a shot at a prospect that might be something. This would have to be a legitimate A1 prospect.
I mean, if I'm Montreal.
No, you don't think so, Dave? You think this is a whatever, like just a solid prospect would make the trade?
I would make the trade. Well, would Ken Hughes? I don't know. I don't know how. He seems to be very adamant about what he wants, and he won't move a guy until he gets what he wants. Maybe so. Maybe.
All right. So why would you tell me why Dave would move Edmondson for a maybe not run-of-the-mill prospect, but not a top quality prospect?
Because I don't think you're getting a top level prospect, and I think that if you're not, what's the alternative? Is you keep Joel Edmondson,
keep him,
and I don't know what's the point. You know what I mean? Like if there's someone you like and you see something that you want, I'm not saying that it's going to be like, hey, I'm giving you this bum. You take him, and here's Joel Edmondson. It's obviously going to be someone that Ken Hughes has to like, that has prospect, but I don't think it has to be a lock as an A1 prospect. Like that's because even Justin Barron, you want to talk about Justin Barron? He wasn't a lock to be an A1 prospect either. He was a very good prospect, but I don't think that he was like on everyone's best watch list across the league. You know what I mean? When you tell me
to
A1
be fair.
prospect,
that was the part of the Lehkonen package, right?
Yes.
And we know your stance on Leckie. Do you have a higher regard for Edmondson and what he can do and bring to a team versus Lehkonen?
It's different. It's hard to say because like Lehkonen is a guy. There's probably more Lehkonens available across the NHL than Edmonton. But I think overall, Lehkonen probably would have brought more value to Colorado You know what I mean? It depends on your organizational need. But Edmonton is one of 6, or probably one of 4 by the time the playoffs really get going. You know what I mean? So
because scarcity, that might drive up his value.
That's what I mean. Yeah, for sure.
I think LA would probably be a good partner for Montreal for Edmonton because they've got a lot of depth on defense with young kids coming up, and they have actually too many. But with that being said, defensemen are a premium in the NHL when it comes to the playoff push.
And the thing is here's the thing about saying you have too many D prospects. Technically, on paper, the Canadiens have too many D prospects, but you're not going to start dealing them away before you know what you have with them. You know what I mean? I don't know if teams are willing to just move guys like it's just, to me, again, it's crazy to me. And it's
I love talking to Dave every trade deadline because he's like, none of this makes sense. Then it happens, and he's like, well, it still doesn't make sense, but it happened.
Look at Florida, for example, okay? They got probably so caught up in those negotiations because they really wanted Ben Sherratt, right? So they got so caught up in those negotiations that eventually they convinced themselves to part ways with this year's first-round pick, which is a disaster. That was the stupidest thing they probably could have done. But now imagine had they put the brakes on that and said, we have this first round pick now, and now we're willing to deal with it. Let's go shop it around the league and see what we can get. And I'm guaranteeing you they could have got better than Ben Sherratt for that first round pick. And that's what bothers me when it comes to these general managers, is I think you get so caught up in the negotiations and you're like, you know what? And so in a small frame, you're like, okay, this trade makes sense. But when you open it wide and you look at it, it's like, you could have gotten better than Ben Sherratt for that first round pick. I think you could have. And that's what boggles my mind sometimes.
I mean, in hindsight, without question, given where
Not
they
in
ended
hindsight,
up
even during the time.
And it wasn't just the first.
I know, but
it was more.
Yeah,
that first round pick they could have gotten way more than just Ben Sherratt.
And that's
especially a 2023 first round pick. It's crazy.
Didn't. And I think the media for both teams focus on the deal itself, and they never take a second to think, man, what can they have done other than this? You know what I mean? It's crazy to me.
I don't think so. I mean, just look. You got a GM. Sorry, just quickly. I mean, when you talk about what GMs and their lack of future sight, look at what our man Lou did with the Horvat thing and his comments afterwards. And then somebody says, by the time that contract's up, Lou is 90. Do you think he cares? And it's like, eesh, okay, yeah, he wants to win now. Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
Well, he ain't going to win, I'll tell you that much. Not with the roster they have. Even adding Horvat's not going to make them a Stanley Cup contender.
I mean, what is it, a year ago, 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago. They went to the conference final.
I think they're closer than you think. They have a stud in nets, right? Sorokin's a stud. And if you could just shore it up a little bit, there, I think they can make a run for it. Whether they'll actually win the cup, I don't know.
So we're going with the Mark Bergevin mentality. Well, just get our foot in the door. Then we don't know what could happen. Just get our foot in the door.
They have a bit more pieces.
Their team today is better than any team Bergevin had at any given point.
100%.
I mean,
100%.
So it's a little bit more than foot in the door. Just a little bit.
Exactly.
But okay, all right. So that's Edmonton, and again, I mean, you guys correct me if you think that I'm wrong here. I think he is the most likely target to move. That isn't to say
I'll bring up a player. I'll bring up a player. Recently, TVA Sports came out saying that with the exception of Monahan and Edmondson and Josh Anderson, those are the names that we keep hearing in the rumor mill. But apparently, there are several teams interested in David Savard. And that we'd be surprised on how good the offers actually are for him. Now, I'm going to take a page out of Dave's book on this and saying if the offers were that great, then the trade likely would have happened already. Okay? But with that being said, that's coming from TVA Sports. They did state that there's a lot of teams interested in, again, a defenseman who's got a playoff pedigree, who's won a Stanley Cup, and happens to be a right-hand defenseman.
And has been traded for a first-round pick to make that trade happen, by the way. We all like to forget and poke fun of poor Davey, but this wouldn't be the first time he's traded for a first.
Okay, well, it will be the one and only time he's traded for a first, because if David Savard gets a first-round pick, I'm leaving the show. I'm leaving this planet. Okay, forget it. But David Savard's a guy I could absolutely see move because they could probably get him cheap. And TVA Sports said something when they said it, they said you'd be surprised by how good the offers were. Meaning that you're probably thinking nothing, and it's probably like a third round.
A second.
A second, fine. I still think it'd be crazy to give a second for David Savard, but it's more palpable because he is a guy who just a few years ago helped, right? He's not too far away.
Wasn't he Hedman's partner?
Yes, no. I believe. No, he was not.
No, he wasn't? No. I thought he played with Hedman.
No.
Which obviously would like make him look very good during that playoff run. So anyway.
He was actually playing on the third pairing at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, but still, I mean, maybe he didn't do much for Tampa, but like he's a serviceable defenseman, right? And he was able to get that first round pick, and I think he's a guy whose value is like at rock bottom, but you could still move him. I think that he's a guy that probably is likely to move because it's a forgotten name that probably nobody's going to be going after anyways.
I have something that I've been thinking about because I thought it was funny, right? Like I always make comments about how the fact that, you know, the Habs fans out there, especially when it comes close to trade deadline, want to trade half the team. They want to jettison half the players off this team, trade them, trade everybody, get what you can, grab. So is there a scenario, realistic scenario? And again, most people don't take into account cap implications and things, so I'm asking you two to do this. Is there a realistic scenario where there can be, by the time the trade deadline ends, Edmondson gone, Savard gone, Monahan gone, Anderson gone, Hoffman gone? 5 players traded.
Yeah, the realistic scenario is that every one of the teams that are acquiring those players overpaid.
But can a team even do that? Has it ever happened that a team traded away 5 players during the season? Because that, I always come back to that. I'm like, you guys want to trade everything. I mean, I don't know if a team has ever realistically gotten rid of like a massive contingent of their players during the season. Like, even if you got everything you asked for, I mean, how does that happen? Who do you fill? Who bodies go there?
Well, there's going to be some bodies coming back depending on who you're moving.
I mean, I guess. Yeah, I guess. You got AHL guys.
The players you mentioned, I mean, there's not that much leadership on this team to begin with, but you're pretty much depleting the leadership to zero at that point, or close to it. So
is that really a factor? You think Hughes and Gorton hold back players for leadership in case they get what their ask is?
Well, Hughes has also stated that you need to have a balance of veterans there too. It can't just be a team full of kids. It can't be. And we've said it too in previous episodes. And everybody in their right minds will say the same thing. You need to have some veterans there. Even if you are rebuilding, you can't just be a bunch of kids, because I think there needs to be a bit of a balance. And if you do build a team that's just kids, and if your plan is to complete this rebuild after 5 years, you might be extending that rebuild a little longer if you don't have the right veterans. Instilling the culture or maintaining.
You're not necessarily saying it's not going to happen because these things don't happen. You're saying it's not going to happen because Hughes is going to make sure it doesn't happen to not get rid of guys that have these leadership
They're not going to get rid of everybody that you're hearing in the rumor mill. I'd be super, super surprised. Like, I honestly think that
I know a lot of
people want. Has it happened?
I remember the Sabres back in the day. They did some stuff. They moved a whole bunch of people. They moved like Newvrith at the time. They traded Torrey Mitchell. That was the Habs acquired like Torrey Mitchell, Brian Flynn.
It was the year of the Ryan O'Reilly, no? When Ryan O'Reilly moved.
Yeah, I think so. Tyler Myers, I think they dealt him to Winnipeg the same year. Like, it was a million things all at once.
Okay, so it is feasible.
But okay, now that's a perfect example, right? I'm glad they brought that up because I completely forgot about it. But now look how long it's taken the Buffalo Sabres to get to the point that they are today.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily because of that deal. I think that
no, it's not because of the deal. It's in general. Now you see them; they would like to have some veterans on the roster, but I find it sets it back. But you need to have a balance. It can't just be a bunch of kids leading the way, and especially in this market in Montreal.
That's fine, but I think that if you have trades in place, you got to make the moves, and you'll find veteran leadership elsewhere, man. You could get a veteran back in one of those deals if you're really that concerned about it. I don't know. Veterans are a dime a dozen in the NHL. I think that's a little bit overrated. I think that you need to make the move if you need to make the move. You know, like
I just don't think they'll ship out 5 players for that.
I just don't think there's that much interest in everybody, and I don't think. Even if there was, I don't think they hit Ken Hughes' standards, because he seems to have high standards in deals, and he seems to know what he wants, right? So,
yeah.
Other really than the Petrie move, he's pretty much hit probably everything that he's wanted to accomplish.
You think he lost the Petrie trade?
I didn't say he lost it. I'm just saying that probably wasn't the return he or others had envisioned. I think that he pulled the deal because that's what he had to move Petrie out, and that's it. I'm not saying he lost it.
Okay.
I'm just saying
that's fair. That's fair. That's a fair point.
Out of all the moves, that's the one you could point to and say he probably settled on that one.
Yeah, I remember our sentiment about that at the time was like, yeah, we were pretty high on Petrie, thinking we were going to get another first and stuff. And then when the Matheson thing came in, which, when Matheson has been healthy, he's been very, very good. It's been fun to see him play. Just regrettable, again, he's suffering from this injury bug that's plagued this team for some time now. But yeah, I mean, I that was kind of like my thought about it. I was thinking, like, you got all these guys, and obviously you hear lots of rumors and stuff, but the way that the season is going, and then Dandanov is out there too. Not that he's going to probably get you much, but you got guys on expiring contract. Drouin is another name.
No, they've mentioned Hoffman's name's been out there, and I'm surprised by that because I wouldn't trade anything to get a Hoffman. But apparently there are teams looking at him, and that's what was.
I mean, if you're a team doing a playoff push and you have a hole on your third line, not your fourth line, because that's not really a player for your fourth line, but your third line and a guy who could bump to second, and you're like, we can get him, and he's not going to cost us a first.
No. Hoffman,
I can see some teams.
The only position and moment in a game that I wouldn't mind having Hoffman there is second pairing power play.
The thing about not so much Hoffman, but the thing about the GMs that most people have to remember is they all suffer from the same delusion. That delusion is, I feel that if I took a player who's underperforming on your team, he will perform in my team with my coach and my stuff. They've done it time and time again, and you get a lot of egg on your face all the time when they do it, but they seem to constantly do it. It's like something that just cannot be shaked from these guys. They just feel like I can bring a guy in and he's going to just explode on my team. And I could see it. I could see Hoffman being traded for a cap dump back, whatever, that's on an expiring deal, and a third or something. It would shock me if he was moved. I could see it. I really could. Dandanov would shock me. Drouin would shock me. Anderson would shock me. Even though there's all this interest apparently for him and stuff, I can't see a deal that comes back that is going to be a deal that would make Kent Hughes pull the trigger on that. So that would shock me if he moves. I'm expecting Edmondson to move. I'm expecting Monahan when he comes back. Hopefully he comes back, and hopefully he can play a bit before the trade deadline. I expect him to move. And the fact that Savard's name popped out of nowhere, it's funny because I can actually see him moving too. These are guys that I actually think.
But Dave's right.
Plausible.
Dave's right. Those are David Savard. Now that that rumor came out, I can see it happening because it's the type of deal that none of us were really expecting until this rumor came out, and nobody's really spoken about it.
Well,
and if it does happen, to be like,
there's an interest for him, but he's actually been playing really good hockey of late. Like he's been pretty good, all in all.
Oh, he's been blocking shots. He's the right type of player. If the team acquiring him has the need and expectation of him just being a defensive defenseman who's going to block some shots, be a bit of a leader in the room.
You don't get David Savard to be a 1-2 on your team. You're getting David Savard to round out your defense.
Right.
And David Savard on a 5-6 is perfect.
But again, don't expect like a crazy return for him.
I don't think the one thing to remember too is we kind of have like tunnel vision on the Canadiens, right? There's 16 teams that won't make the playoffs, right? There's probably 12 of those that are sellers. You're telling me a team that's in the play can't find someone better than David Savard maybe to make it out of all those teams that would be available? That's the one thing again that we kind of.
It might cost more, Dave.
Maybe.
They might be able to find somebody, but maybe that team who has it that's better than David Savard is going to look and say, Joel Edmondson, they want a first. Well, we want a first too.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. That's another thing that I think that we have to take into consideration when Matt says like, oh, we haven't seen a team trade 5 players. It's because the league, there's way more than just those 5 players. Like that's what we're seeing here in Montreal. We're seeing there's 5 players up for grabs, but like every team has 5 players up for grabs. So obviously,
I'm looking at the trade bait board here, right? I mean, just quickly scanning through it, and I'm looking at the defenseman. And the thing about the Savard of the world is he's not in this echelon that I'm about to read you. When you have the top one all the way down, and that's what makes him so attractive. He's not going to be Chychrun,
But is he on the trade bait board?
Apparently he is. He's not Erik Karlsson. I mean,
no, but you don't need
Gravikov,
Klinberg. That's not what you guys are talking about.
Gostisbehere, Dumba. These are names that are apparently on Luke Shen. Okay, Luke Shen's a little bit more comparable. But I mean, my point is, if you want a defenseman and you got guys on the board that are like that are possible, and you're like, of course I want Erik Karlsson, of course I want Jacob Chychrun on my team, of course. But look at what comes the price tag. You just can't make that happen. So now enter Davey.
Okay, but Davey is not on that board, right? Like the board that's in front of you.
No, he is not on that board. No, I went 25 names. He's not there. No.
Which goes to say that probably there's other teams that also have guys who aren't on the board who are that level. And I mean, I'm not going to. I'm just saying, it's just, I get that, from Montreal perspective, it makes sense. Hey, David Savard's a guy, but for other teams, there's probably a pool of players that they could get that's better than David Savard that they could get for around the same price.
I think there's maybe 4 teams. Really, there's 4 teams that are going to be willing to part ways with a first round pick. And I'm not saying for David Savard, just willing to part ways with their first round pick this trade block, and they're not going to just trade it for someone like David Savard. There's probably, we're talking about Colorado, Boston, Tampa Bay, and as delusional as they are, probably the Toronto Maple Leafs. All right? So, again, I'm going to come back to this. When you're naming Chychrun and Karlsson, those players, they're very expensive. They're going to be a minimum of first-round pick price tag. Yes, they make your team better right away, but it's going to be a first-round pick and plus, and it's going to grow.
Yeah, it has to be a much bigger deal, without question.
Especially with somebody like Karlsson who's got an $11 million contract. You got to find a way to fit that money in, send contract. It becomes more complicated than somebody like David Savard on certain teams that they could just plug him into the third, and he's going to come in and he's going to help to some capacity. Okay. So that's where I'm saying it might be easier to make that deal. Edmondson, same thing. Okay. I think Edmondson's value is better than Savard, but it's going to be the same thing. It's just an easier trade to make versus them trying to figuring out how the heck are they going to fit Karlsson in the cap when you have 16 or 17 teams who are literally playing in LTIR right now.
No, listen, I'm just saying it makes sense, but the attractiveness of him is because of the price tag associated to him in contract and stuff. And of course, he's not a pylon. He does his job well. He's not going to put up points, though. That's the difference. It's a different kind of defense.
For entertainment value, for this podcast, for the media, for Dave on TSN 690, I hope Montreal trades all 5 players. We'll have stuff to talk about for a few days. It'll be very exciting.
It'll be the dream.
But it's unlikely. Okay, Josh Anderson's name is out there. It's been out there for probably 2 years now. Okay, but now you've been hearing it a little bit more than usual. But I don't think they're going to move him unless they get blown out of the water on a trade offer.
Well,
and there's going to be prospects. There's going to be prospects. Calgary's name has been rumored there for Josh Anderson. Unless they're willing to part ways with Peltier plus and maybe something else, Josh Anderson's not moving. So what is the appetite from those teams to pay that? And I know there might be some people that might listen to this that are not Habs fans that are going to think I'm crazy to even suggest that Josh Anderson would get that kind of a return. He would get that kind of a return because at the end of the day, there aren't many power forwards who can bring the tool set that he can bring. It's not just about
career
points.
High of 42 points, right?
Yeah, well, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's not just about points.
I love Josh Anderson, but I also have to be a realist, and that is a fact too.
And the power forward thing is overblown here in Montreal. I think that the Canadiens didn't have a power forward for so many years that when Josh Anderson came, whoa, let's go, baby, all in on Josh Anderson. I don't think teams view Josh Anderson the same way Canadiens fans view Josh Anderson.
I think you're wrong on that. I think there's teams that view him. They just don't view him as a first-line power forward or somebody he's literally a complementary piece who can create space, crash the net, go in front of the net, play a very north-south game and use his speed and I hate this term, it's Brian Burke's term, and uses truculence to get where he has to get to.
Yeah,
A team like New Jersey, maybe, New Jersey fans are looking more for Timo Meier and all that, but a team like New Jersey that they're on the smaller side could use a Josh Anderson.
Not saying they couldn't. I'm not saying that Josh Anderson has zero trade value or anything. I'm just saying I don't think, his skill set being so unique to the league. I mean, I don't know. It's
okay. How about this? To end it, I don't care what the trade package is. I don't care about returns. I just want to know, when trade deadline ends, what team do the following players play for? That's it. That's all I'm asking. And we're going to circle this and come back to it. I, again, don't care what the package is. Rapid fire, Vito, then Dave, each player. We start with Edmonton. Where does he go?
Los Angeles.
Dave.
Montreal.
Dadonov.
Montreal. Sadly.
Savard.
I don't even know who he's rumored to go to.
Where is he? Say Montreal then.
Jeez.
Rapid fire.
Yeah.
Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay.
I'll go Edmonton for
Edmonton. Okay. Monahan.
Colorado.
Okay.
Montreal.
Okay. And last but not least, Monty. Sam Montembeault. The man who's worth a first-round pick, as heard on Dave's most latest show on the weekends on TSN 690, The Starters, from none other than Simon Salikis. He thinks Monty's going to get it first. I don't care about the return. Where's Monty playing come trade deadline?
Thanks a lot, Simon, for bringing this up. Thank you. I appreciate it. Where does Monty end up? He's not moving. He's going to stay with the Montreal Canadiens, and definitely not for a first-round pick, even if he were to be moved.
Okay.
Montreal as well.
Montreal. All right.
Josh, you left Josh Anderson off.
Yeah, because he's not moving. You're both going to say Montreal, and he's not moving.
I'm not going to.
Okay.
I wouldn't say Montreal.
Josh Anderson, then.
New Jersey
Montreal.
Devils.
All right. Circle it down. My camera's going nuts. Circle it down. Come back to this one. We're gonna come back and check post trade deadline. You can't change now. This is it. Locked it in. This is February 7th. It's locked in. I don't care what happens. I don't care if somebody calls you and says, I have absolute proof they're going to X team. This is where it's going. We're gonna come and check back on you guys post trade deadline. For everybody, thanks so much for taking the time. Like, subscribe if you can. If you like, please, that would be wonderful. Tell your friends, tell your grandma. We love grandmas. They love listening. They do. My grandmother likes listening. What do you want me to tell you? So anyways, on that happy note, for Dave and Vito, I'm Matt, and this was Get Pucked.